Hello, everybody. My name is Charity Counts. I'm the Executive Director of the Association of Midwest Museums. Thank you for joining us today for the 2024 Best Practices Award virtual event. Before we begin the program, I want to invite my co-host for this evening, Betsy Matt Turner from the Putnam Museum, to offer a land acknowledgement.
Thanks, Charity. My name is Betsy Matt Turner, and in this era of virtual meetings, when digital spaces may substitute our physical sense of place, it is important to redirect our attention to the land we each occupy in this moment and honor the Indigenous people who have called it home. Because I am located in Davenport, Iowa, I invite you to join me in acknowledging the Iowa Nation, whose ancestral land this was, as well as the Sauk and Meskwaki nations who forcibly ceded this land. We acknowledge their elders, both past and present, as well as future generations. Thank you.
Thank you, Betsy. Before we get into the fun part of the program, I want to cover a few housekeeping notes. First of all, you're welcome to have your video on if you choose, but please keep your audio muted until we prompt you to unmute at different points in the program. You can also have your video off if you prefer and just use the chat or your reaction features to participate. This event is an opportunity for all of us to celebrate our recipient, those who are here live and those who join by watching it later, but also to learn more about them and their work. We encourage you to react to what you're hearing today. So you can do this by, like I said, using the chat and commenting or asking questions. You can also raise your hand to ask questions out loud when prompted, or to offer comments or remarks. There will be moments for audible applause. We'll tell you. You can choose to wave or snap your fingers. You can unmute and clap and, as I say, hoot and holler loudly if you so choose. But feel free to share your response. We want to celebrate and have some fun today with our recipient. For those of you getting to know AMM for the first time, I'd like to provide a little bit of background on our organization. Founded in 1927, we are one of the very first museum associations in the United States. We serve an 8-state region, and our community includes traditional museums and historic sites, as well as art and cultural centers, science centers, zoos, children's museums, and libraries. We host many virtual programs each year, but my favorite are always the award series, and it's no lie. The reason is because it's a joy to be together and to celebrate all of our honorees through these events that not only bring together their peers in the museum community, but also their staff and colleagues, family and friends, partners, community members to celebrate. You've already met my co-host, Betsy Matt Turner. I want to acknowledge others who are on that are part of today's program. Representing our award recipient, member of the Children's Museum of Pittsburgh, are Jane Werner, Anne Fullenkamp, Rachel Master-Marino, and Max Pittman. We're also thrilled to have the museum's key project partners here. So Ed Liskey from CITE, James Tigner, and Steve Hellner-Burris from Hosanna House. All right, I'm going to pass the mic back to Betsy, who's going to get the awards portion of the program started and give you a little bit of background on the award and why they were selected. Betsy?
Thanks, Charity. The Best Practices Award recognizes museums and cultural organizations whose innovative projects or community partnerships have pushed beyond the status quo and led to the advancement of best museum practices or the establishment of new practices at their institutions in order to better fulfill their missions. The Children's Museum of Pittsburgh is this year's Best Practices Award recipient. And today we gather to celebrate a unique collaboration between the museum and Hosanna House, a nonprofit with a mission to end a life cycle of poverty while helping individuals reach maximum potential. These two organizations launched the Center for Aviation Technology and Training, also known as CATT, and Tuskegee Airmen Museum at Hosanna House's Sherwood Event Center in 2022. The goal was to inspire youth to seek out careers in aviation and features STEM programming, such as drone technology literacy for teens through hands-on flight training and specialized training to prepare high school students to enter trade schools and colleges. Building on the success of CATT, the two organizations set out to create a traveling exhibit that would serve as a future source of funding for both programs and for future programs. The new exhibit, Aim High, is a shining example of CMP's unwavering commitment to fostering dynamic community alliances that enrich the lives of residents across Southwest Pennsylvania. The traveling exhibit also serves as a groundbreaking model of financial sustainability, where the fruits of its success are equitably shared between the museum and Hosanna House. During today's event, we will have the opportunity to learn from the staff and leadership at Children's Museum of Pittsburgh and its partners about how these projects came to be, their impact, and where the partnership is going from here. Before we do that, I would love for everyone here with us today to unmute or use Zoom reaction icons to join me in a round of applause to celebrate Children's Museum of Pittsburgh and their partners at Aim High. I now welcome Jane Werner, Executive Director of the Children's Museum, to offer remarks and kick off the program portion of this event.
Thanks, Betsy. I am Jane Werner. I'm the director of the Children's Museum. I've been the director for way too long. I don't even want to do the math. It's been a long time. And this project is special to me in many different ways. The mission of the Children's Museum is to provide innovative and inclusive museum experiences that inspire creativity, curiosity, kindness, and joy. But then there's a second part to our mission statement, which I always forget and I have to read. We forge connections with artists, community partners, and neighbors to work on behalf of children, youth, and families. And one of those partners is Hosanna House. And the Aim High exhibit in the CATT Center is just, actually, it's not the first thing we've ever done together. And how all good partnerships start, it comes together over a conversation. And Leon Hayes, who's on a sabbatical that I just got back from, he's now taking his, it was this kind of wonderful meeting over coffee. And we found that we had all these connections and they were interested in having a makerspace. So the first thing that we partnered together with, we were kind of really exploring makerspaces and community. The first thing that we did with Hosanna House was a makerspace. And then we started to actually give them some of our traveling exhibits. Now, Leon is one of the most persuasive people I've ever met. I can't say no. Like he makes everything sound like, of course we would do it. Like there's no second thought. And Steve is laughing because he knows this is true. Like he somehow talks people into doing things that they want to do, but they just didn't know they wanted to do. And I can just remember him calling me and saying, hey, I got this idea. I want to teach kids to fly. And I was like, okay. And he said, yeah, I'm going to get a plane and I would like to do a museum at Hosanna House at the Sherwood Center. I was like, sure, because you want to help and because he's Leon, you say, sure, why not? And that is actually the origin story of this yet most unique partnership. And I am fortunate enough to work with like the most wonderful people in the world, the most creative people who are kind of take these crazy ideas that we have and make them a reality. So it's, I want to thank AMM and Charity and Betsy and everybody who's joining us. I mean, this is a real celebration for us. We think this is a really interesting partnership. We hope that other people kind of go out into their community, find great partners, and really learn from each other, which is something that I think we've done over and over with Hosanna House and with so many other partners in Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh is one of those towns that once you know one person, like everybody. And so it just keeps kind of expanding. I want to thank everybody who's joining today. And I want to thank both staff of Hosanna House and Smithsonian and the Children's Museum staff, because none of these things come together without all of us working together. And it's just been very fulfilling. The staff kind of made it all a reality. which is absolutely so wonderful. And now it's going out to the world. So I'm going to turn it over to Anne Fullenkamp, who is our Senior Director of Creative Experiences, who has really worked diligently with Ed and James and Steve and Leon to kind of make this really come together and be kind of the special program that it is. So Anne, you want to take it away?
Sure. So again, I echo Jane in thanking Charity and everyone with at AAM for honoring us with this, and it gives us a chance to kind of to tell you how we did it. So I'll talk a little bit about the organization of the project and how we got it to become a traveling exhibit, and then I'm going to pass it on to Ed Liskey, can talk a little bit more about the Smithsonian piece of it. So like Jane said, one of the greatest things that I get to do working at the Children's Museum is I get to see Jane and Leon come in the room and say, hey, we got a new idea, a new project for you. And this was something that was really interesting. But again, it was very broad. We're going to create an aviation museum for kids and everyone's going to learn how to fly. And it was really exciting. My team was super excited to do this. It also came just as part of this occurred during our COVID closure. So in a lot of ways, it was kind of a really important project for us, and our exhibits design team were able to all rally around it because it was very much a bright light in seeing during a time where we were all struggling and seeing a lot of things close. So it was really inspiring to be able to work on something that was actually forward-looking and about getting kids and families out and opening something very positive and future-looking. So a little overview of how this project is organized. Jane mentioned that we had the Hosanna House has a space called it's their Sherwood Event Center. And that's a wonderful place. They hold events. There's a swim club, there are fields, and they do summer camps and a lot of weddings and a lot of different programming. But they had a space that was more than, between 2,000 and 4,000 square feet on a lower level that is now the space for CATT. And Leon brought us in and said, this is what we want to turn into a museum. It literally was kind of like a basement under the under the swim club, but it had wonderful access to the outside and a huge amount of potential. So what we were able to do is we created 3 separate areas. One space is the Aviation Museum and the interactive play space, and then immediately adjacent to that is a classroom space that is now the Maker Classroom Aviation Training Center. And then within that space, there's another room that it's really a flight simulation training lab. So the center now consists of those 3 areas together, and then there's a outdoor space, and we have a video, and we'll look at those pictures later. But what was tremendous about it is we could have an interactive museum space right alongside the learning spaces, and that's what made this project so special. So the other piece of this is each of the partners kind of leaned into our strengths. So as the Children's Museum, we're very good at hands-on interactive experiences for kids. So we knew how to do an interactive gallery with hands-on exhibits that talked about aviation. And then the team from Hosanna House were very skilled in education and programming. And we're already doing this programming about aviation for kids kindergarten through 12. So they were able to fill in the activities and the programs that would take place in the 2 adjacent classrooms. The one piece that we were missing as a group was the historic content to create a museum about Tuskegee Airmen and aviation. So that's when Sites comes in. And luckily for us, they had an exhibition called Black Wings, American Dreams of Flight as part of their Build It Yourself program. So once we were doing research online and trying to figure out how to bring that historic piece and the curation of that into the CATT, the vision for CATT, we reached out to Sites, Ed and his team, and it really was a perfect fit because with that third piece, we then had the complete picture. So now what CATT consists of is the Tuskegee Airmen Museum, where we have an exhibit gallery that currently has the Black Wings content, and we were able to work with the sites team to curate it to fit to our space. We have the interactive exhibits, we have the adjacent learning spaces, and then there's it goes on through their programming where kids and families can then actually learn and get the training. So Ed, I don't know if you want to talk a little bit about the build it yourself model and how that was able to, we were able to modify that to fit into this program.
Sure. Hi, I'm Ed Liskey. I'm one of the scheduling coordinators at Smithsonian Traveling Exhibition Service and Smithsonian Affiliations. And as Anne said, we worked with her and the staff at the Hosanna House back in 2021 to license a copy of the Black Wings, American Dreams of Flight exhibit to them. And that was about our fourth venue of licensing that exhibit, one of our 4 build-it-yourself exhibits. And it was a traveling exhibit originally, traveled for about 4 years. At the end of that, we had this designed exhibition, and we wanted to add it to our roster of projects that venues could host by offering the design files for them to build it, and then to host it for up to 2 years for that license fee. And so we have several other build-it-yourself exhibits that are on the same sort of style, in addition to our normal traveling exhibits. So we worked with them to display it in Hosanna House. And then in 2023, Anne approached us and said that the Black Wings exhibit content would be perfect to go with their planned Aim High traveling exhibition. But it didn't make sense for all of these venues who are going to host the Aim High traveling exhibit to license the Build It Yourself exhibit from us and then build it, each one of them, and display it, only for 2 or 3 months. Because that's quite a big investment in material and time and money. So we did with the Children's Museum of Pittsburgh, we licensed 1 copy for them to build, and then for them to travel with their traveling exhibit, Aim High. And so this is kind of an experiment for us, but it's a way to reach venues that we normally don't work with, and additional venues with this content. And it's proven very popular. And we appreciate being part of this and being recognized as part of this award. So thank you.
Yeah. So, and like Ed said, so the current, where we are currently with the exhibition, we decided to, because the other core thing of what we do at the Children's Museum is we do make traveling exhibits. And we wanted to figure out a way to create a sustainable business model to have funds that could continue to support the ongoing educational programming at Hosanna House, and then also to create a fund where we can upkeep and keep the exhibit, the permanent exhibit at CATT going. So that's where we decided to make a traveling version of what we had created at CATT and put that on tour. So that's what Aim High now is. So it creates a sustainable income stream, revenue stream for, frankly, all of the partners to keep this work going. And it's been really great to see how we've kind of teamed up. We're able to create a model that generates revenue, but also all kind of for this single purpose of spreading and increasing the awareness of aviation and serving our core audience and our mission within each of our organizations, but through this kind of collective vision. So now we've been talking a lot about Aim High, so now we're gonna show it to you. We've prepared a video that'll show you all facets of the exhibit. And then when we come back, we'll hear more from Hosanna House about the impact it's had.
Thank you, Ann, and all of the staff of Children's Museum and Ed, and the work that you guys have done to partner with us at Hosanna House. Jane summed it up really well at the beginning. I'm back at Hosanna House because Leon has this amazing ability to get us all to believe in things that we may not actually think are real, but we don't want to say no. And so this is an example of that. And what I want to do, James is going to share a little bit about how we've leveraged this, but I wanted to just bring greetings from Hosanna House. What we thought was, what I actually personally believe was, wow, how do we get there, is fruition. We're teaching kids actually how to fly. We're actually putting them in planes. That was part of the slideshow, the movie that you just saw. So James, I want to introduce you and to let you share with the group a little bit about what we've now done with the students at Hosanna House.
Yes, thanks, Steve. Thank you, everyone. As I said, my name is James Tigner. I am the Aviation and Marketing Director at Hosanna House. I recently came on board in this past May. And since that time, we've been working hard to incorporate students to help them understand that they can achieve any job in aviation if they so choose. And one of the ways we do that is through the Aviation Museum, the Tuskegee Airmen Museum, which they can see, they can touch, feel, and that it's real and that they can achieve it themselves. So we use the museum in several aspects of reaching kids in our area from all age groups, starting with the youth. We have a summer program that we run every year that has about almost 200 kids that comes through in the summer, and we provide them with a aviation portion of the summer camp where they go through the museum and they get general aviation education. We also have an after-school program that we run during the school year for our youth that are ages 14 through 18. They also get general aviation education. We have now moved into high schools. We're in 3 high schools in the area right now where we provide aviation education either through a drone piloting track and also a private pilot track using the ALPA curriculum that we actually take students to the airport and to get time in seats flying, learning how to be pilots. We have several staff members, one of which is a CFI, a certified flight instructor, that they actually get hours flying in planes. So we want to make sure we reach those underserved children and let them know that they can actually do the things that we tell them they can do and that they can see not only in movies, but they can do it in real life. So I thank everyone for all your expertise and talents of putting the museum together, because it has proven to be an excellent tool to use to the kids to get them motivated, excited about aviation. Okay.
Thanks for this great overview. Before I jump into questions and inviting others to ask questions, do you all have any final thoughts before I move to that segment? Okay, because I feel like we could get into some really like logistical things here. I'm sure people have questions, but I know I do. But I do want to kind of start high level. Just a reminder for folks who are in attendance, you can participate how you wish today. If you want to just keep listening in, that's super, no problem there. If you have a question, if you're curious about something, feel free to drop it in the chat, or you can always raise your hand, use the reaction tools to raise your hand, and then I'll call on you. You can ask with audio and or video, whatever you prefer. So I kind of, like I said, let's just say the 30,000, I'll start up there. I really appreciate, the story of how this came together. I know that the awards committee really was impressed by this. Any kind of partnerships are impressive if they can, not just be successful, but be long-term and build, right? And this is definitely a demonstration of that, which is why it's the best practice, an example of best practice. I I kind of want to start with that partnership. This, I was intrigued by what Jane and then Steve reiterated, Jane said and Steve reiterated earlier about, Leon is just one of those people that just whenever he comes up and says, let's do this, here, I have an idea, and you just go along. I think it takes a pretty special person to have those skills, right? And I think we can learn a lot from folks who are great at that, great at relationship building, great at building trust, great at inspiring others to action, and then successfully carrying out the partnerships. I know that the Children's Museum's also great at this work. So I kind of want to open this up to all of you as you think about your work together and the people in this project, Leon included. I know he's not able to be here and speak on his behalf, but based on your experiences working together on this, what is your advice to your peers and colleagues today, in terms of the secret to success, or in that relationship building and building that trust, where it's really easy for somebody to come up and say, let's teach kids how to fly, and you just go along. Tell me a little bit about, from each of your perspectives, what you think you would want your peers to know, especially in other museums.
So we've thought long and hard about this at the Children's Museum. And maybe I've thought long and hard about it in my life too. I mean, Leon is a special person in the fact that he has big ideas, right? And he makes them happen. And he's also, so he's a visionary, right? But there's also something about being kind. He is a very kind and genuine, authentic person. So even though he has these big dreams and he seems to pull them off over and over and over again, I mean, when he called me up and he said, I want to teach kids to fly, I was like, of course you do. At that point, I didn't know that he had actually been a pilot. So then it all sort of started to make sense. But, he wants, he's a person of faith and he wants to do good in the world. And I think, that is the kind of folks that we look for. We look for people who are kind and who want to do good in the world and who, work with kind people and work with people that are friends too. Like we also have a golden rule. We don't work with people we don't like. It doesn't, partnerships don't work that well unless you really do have that trust and you can have a cup of coffee with them or beer or whatever. And I think that's really key, especially when you're working with kids. You really have to work with people that you like and are doing it for the right reasons too.
Mm-hmm. And
yeah, and then to tee off on that, there's a certain level of being humble and that is needed to be a good partner, because that's one thing that I've learned in my time here at the Children's Museum. It is that partnership is a skill, an art, and it takes work. And it's something that we really work out, just like all of the other things that we do at the museum. And it's become something that we're proud to say it is one of our expertise, because we're practicing and working on it. But I think part of that, it's looking at being honest with ourselves, like what your expertise or what your strengths are, and then really acknowledging where you need help. And I think that's and what you can do. So for us, again, we make stuff, we're focused, we have real experience because we run a children's museum with early childhood, but we don't know how to fly. When we came into this, we've never done that. We're not a science center. So in terms of the exhibit content on that side, we had, some limitations. And also we're not curators in the traditional sense. And certainly when the thought of creating a Tuskegee Airmen exhibit museum, that's a huge task that we have zero expertise in. But I think to Jane's point, in terms of being friends with partners and being honest with whomever you might want to partner with, laying that out on the table, it doesn't necessarily mean that you can't still participate and be a part of the project and be a part of the vision if you believe in it and you want to move that forward. But I think it's really important for you to be really honest about what you can do and what you can't do and how you can help in order to advance and make that project successful. And that's, again, like I mentioned, we looked for others, and that's how we ended up meeting Ed and sites. But in general, as partnerships go, I think that's the honesty and comes right with it, and really being honest about what you can and can't do.
Mhm. Yeah, Steve.
So I would add, for those of you who may be thinking and dreaming about things you want to do, it echoes some of what you've just heard. Find partners who have the expertise, and don't be afraid to admit you don't know. We did not know a lot, but we went to some folks about the Tuskegee Airmen and learned more and build off of that. Leon went to Jane and said, hey, we want to do this. Is it possible? We got the Black Wings Dreams, and we reached out to the Smithsonian. What I'd say is reach out to people who have the expertise. Don't try to become the expert. Do what you do well, but really be open to what you don't know and find the best people, and do that by asking your colleagues. And so I think if you do that, and we built from here we work with the AOPA, Airline Owners and Pilot Association. We didn't build the curriculum that James talked about. We partnered with somebody who already owned it and had it. So find the people who own it, have what you want, and convince them to come and partner with you, and you will be very successful.
Thanks, Steve. James, I'm curious, you're the newest member of the team, right? So, and you're new to Hosanna House. When you walked in and you were like, there's an exhibit here, or maybe you knew about it in advance, but what was your first reaction? Were you excited about the potential there, or were you also like, wow, what do we do with this? What are our options?
So it's funny you say that, because when I first was approached to come over to Hosanna House, I actually met Steve down at Sherwood, and so we went through the museum, and that was my first time ever going through there. And when you walk through it, you just get this feeling of what those pilots went through back then, and it inspires you to dream big, and believe that they went through so much, and I'm not going through anything as remotely as hard as they went through. So it kind of encourages you and makes you want to try harder. And I believe that the students, when they come in there, they feel that same thing, and we want to inspire them and have that same attitude. So when you get around Hosanna House people, and it starts from the top with Leon, of course, and it just trickles down. Everyone has that can-do spirit, that we can do anything, and we want to do anything and everything for our community, and especially the young people in our community, to help them reach their goals and help them dream bigger than just the neighborhood that they live in. So it's very inspiring.
Awesome. I'm glad to hear that. This is great. Rachel and Ed, feel free to jump in if there was something you wanted to say in response to that question. Otherwise, I'll move on, because I know I've got some questions for you. Okay. All right. I do want to dive a little bit into the traveling exhibit piece of this, because, part of the reason why you all were selected for this award was it wasn't just the partnership, it was the fact that you've now come up with a sustainable model of revenue, and that it's a little bit different from other traveling exhibit models. So I do want to ask, as somebody who's had a lot of experience in the traveling exhibit space, I'm very curious about this. And of course, as I organize conferences, I'm not always able to attend all your sessions to talk about this too. So I want to make sure we talk about this a little bit here. Do you have any general words of wisdom for our organizations considering entering the traveling exhibit business, just in general? Rachel, do you want to take this one, or Jane?
Yeah, Rachel.
Or Anne?
So the one thing that we can tell you is that we do build all of our exhibits and design them in-house. So that's a little bit different than a lot of museums are doing these days. So we have control of that a little bit, but we also are fortunate enough to have a growth capital fund that helps us fund our exhibits. So,
Yeah.
you know, Pittsburgh is the land of foundations, and all the money that was made during the Gilded Age, some of it, a lot of it stayed in Pittsburgh. So Pittsburgh shrank and the foundations got bigger. So one of the foundations is actually sunsetting, and they were looking for places to think about how to generate income. And so we came up with this model where we can actually invest a little bit of money in a traveling exhibit and get partners, get whatever. And then 50% of the income that comes in goes into our general operating, 40% goes back into the growth capital, and 10% goes into the New Ideas Fund. So we can, it's a little research and development fund. And shockingly, even though we started with $3 million, we still have $3 million because of this setup. So we can keep investing. So one of the things that we did in this is that we did invest some money from the growth capital fund in it. And then we came up with this revenue share. So it doesn't go with the revenue share that I just described. Whatever the income is 50% goes to Hosanna House and 50% goes to the Children's Museum. So it's kind of seeding the way. So that's kind of the financial setup of it. And Rachel and Ann, you can take it from there, because Rachel is the master of figuring out how to rent exhibits and how this all kind of goes together. So
I think to Charity's question about, you know, if you're thinking of doing a traveling exhibit, I guess first I would say there's a difference between temporary exhibits and traveling exhibits. And that's a really important thing to note. And while we do have the permanent installation at Hosanna House, that exhibit and those designs were not just copy and paste for the traveling, right? Things had to be modified and updated in order to travel, because traveling is a whole different beast. And so I think that kind of, I was just on a session about this. Traveling exhibits aren't easy. I think that's the simplest way to put it. But they are rewarding, and it is a wonderful way to kind of extend your mission beyond your local kind of footprint. This exhibit specifically has been really exciting. There have been people that have had some of the last living Tuskegee Airmen come to their openings, or family members of Tuskegee Airmen that have been wanting to be involved and kind of share their footprint. They're like kind of their messaging. And so it's been really lovely to see that and hear those stories. That I've talked to has their own story of kind of why they're so engaged with this subject matter and why they want to bring it for their community. So that's been really lovely to see. We do have two venues. It will be in the Midwest. It's currently at Chicago Children's Museum right now. So that's one spot. And then it will be going to Grand Rapids, Michigan, to their Children's Museum. So I think that's kind of the long and short of it, I guess.
Great. Ed, I am curious, you know, particularly with this model, what's something you want to share? Like, and do you have any kind of just initial thoughts or reactions to how it's been going and what you consider with this model versus others that you want other people to know who are in the industry or are thinking about it?
I mean, I think a lot of this, what went to the success of this was at sites that we were open to just this new idea, because we're used to creating or traveling exhibits from the Smithsonian or from outside collaborators. But, you know, they're traveling exhibits. They usually go for 4 or 5 years. We also have some free poster exhibits. And then we have these build it yourself exhibits, as I mentioned. You know, they're intended for 2-year license periods. But this was a new way to look at it. And so I'm just glad that we were able to think, you know, that we were interested in doing this to reach new audiences and to get our content out to different areas of the country we wouldn't otherwise go to. And I do think, you know, we had to reassure ourselves that like the branding would represent us and the Children's Museum equally. And we had to sort of set that up ahead of time. But once we were assured with that, you know, I'm just glad we were able to be open to this. And it's, I think, to go back to more generally about traveling exhibits, you know, at sites, it's a service to share the Smithsonian and Smithsonian resources around the country to all of the taxpayers who help support us. So that's kind of part of our reason for being. We're part of education, outreach. but I do think it's, really important to know why you're creating a traveling exhibit, whether it's to bring in income or to share your collections, or just as a service. I think that's pretty important to know from the beginning.
I'm glad you mentioned sort of the branding piece of this, because one of the things I was wondering about was because I know that the conversations around ownership and intellectual property and all of that and money can be really challenging, right? And no matter how good the partnership is. And so I'm just curious if you could somebody maybe in the group, a couple of you could share sort of how you navigated the conversations, for all partners involved, and how you share ownership of this project. Because I know that, obviously the revenue is shared between Hosanna House and the Children's Museum. But just what does ownership look like? Like, who's managing day to day? How are you reporting out on this? What does it look like?
Yeah, so I'll start, and then Rachel and Ed can jump in. But that was a big part of this too. It's funny, we were all committed to the content, but when it comes to traveling exhibits too, sometimes it really is the branding. So when we went to in order to get your content out, we all know we need that logo. So that was where once we made the decision to take what we had done at in Pittsburgh and Wilkinsburg with Hosanna House and turn that into a traveling exhibit, like Rachel mentioned, we turned it into something else. So that's when we created the entity, the IP of Aim High, Soaring with the Tuskegee Airmen. That brand ID, that name didn't exist when we opened and actually created the project initially. That was CATT, the Center for Aviation Technology and Training, and the Tuskegee Airmen Museum. So we had to create a new brand IP for the traveling exhibit. So the Children's Museum with Hosanna House, we created that brand idea for Aim High. And then in order to make this work and bring Black Wings along, I know Ed and I and Rachel, we had a lot of conversations and a lot of reviews about how the marketing manual for the Aim High content and the Black Wings would come together. And luckily, like Ed mentioned, everyone was open to the collaboration and the back and forth. And that was really important because the Black Wings content IP was well established. We had it. We had already practiced using it at CATT, at the permanent museum. So we were familiar with the assets and how to use it. So that's when we were developing the new brand. We did have to think carefully about how to integrate it. And then when we were putting this out, the other big part of traveling exhibits, it's the stuff, but it's also the manuals. It's the education manuals, programs manuals, the technical manuals, and the marketing manuals. So there are rules and guides for how venues need to talk about both exhibits together. I think that's the main thing too. When we send this out, we make it very clear to potential renters that it's basically a 2-for-1. If in that initial conversation, because people might come to the exhibit because they're interested, they have early childhood program and they saw the airplanes and little kids playing with the airplanes, they want that. Other people are coming to it because they saw the Black Wings content, Tuskegee Airmen, they want that. So it's a lot of conversations, but it is, we make it very clear that you're getting both and they complement each other. So that's part of those talking about partnerships and traveling exhibits, the relationship building, and that's where both Ed and Rachel on our behalf really build those relationships and have those conversations. Rachel, I don't know, in terms of as you've been going out to rent this, what kind of conversations or discussions or questions you might have had from people.
No, I think, it's always a conversation with folks' marketing departments. They seem to be more involved now more than ever on just understanding what the brand looks like and how it gets put out. But as far as kind of the brand management and moving things forward, we work with sites and Ed and his team the same way we work with any of our partners for a traveling exhibit. And so we honor any of their national sponsors. We send ads to them and press releases. We share information with them for that approval. And so while we do have guidelines and we can kind of guide it as much as we can, we do kind of continue that conversation with sites ongoing to make sure that they're pleased with how everything's looking on their end. But day-to-day administration kind of comes through us. But like any good partnership, it's just kind of continuing that
If you need me
communication.
to let museum security know he fell, I'm happy to do that. Are you okay? Okay. You're fine.
Sorry about that. Thanks, Rachel and Ann and everybody. I'm conscious of time. I want us to start kind of wrapping up here. I do have one kind of final question, just maybe Jane or Ann. What's on the horizon? Any new programs, events, or projects that you're excited about that you could tease here today?
I'm going to let Ann take this because
Okay.
something really exciting happening in January here at the museum. And we're really, it's going to lead to something that I'm excited about later on. So we always kind of start, and then we kind of make it bigger and bigger. So
yeah. So
we caught the Leon bug actually. So.
Yeah. So we do have our again, another partnership. We have our latest traveling exhibition called I Am Wild, a Charlie Harper exhibit. And that's where we partnered with Brett Harper, Charlie Harper's son. Charlie Harper was an artist and an illustrator who worked in the 20th century. And he's known for his iconic posters that he did for the National Park Service. So the exhibit is about his artwork, but also his love for nature and conservation and biodiversity. So we're using his artwork as inspiration to create an interactive exhibit. So that'll premiere at the Children's Museum in January, and then it'll begin touring in September. And then what Jane was teasing that out is this exhibit. And one of the other reasons to do traveling exhibits, sometimes it brings you content and new ideas that might not be in your wheelhouse, but it gets your team excited to do more. So we're using what we've learned about nature, biodiversity, conservation, and art, because art is at the core of everything we do at the Children's Museum. We're using this as a jumping off point to redesign our backyard exhibit and then and beyond, and thinking about our educational programming in our nature programming, our garden education programming, our backyard exhibit, but then even taking it into the community and to do more beyond that. So that's what's coming up. And then maybe I also would like to, there's still a lot actually more going on at CATT. One thing we did do soon after we opened the permanent exhibit, we helped them, or they're now extending outside, and there's now real airplanes at Sherwood. And I know there are big plans to go beyond that. And then also Aim High, the traveling exhibit, is going to come back to the Children's Museum next fall. And we're really excited about that because we're looking again about partnerships, and we have a relationship with our airport and kind of teeing off with all the programs, the educational programs that are happening at Hosanna House, to kind of bring all of that back together with the traveling exhibit and bring more, see what we can do to in terms of that partnership next fall. So yeah, we're very excited about that too.
That all sounds great. Thanks for sharing. Well, I just want to say congratulations once again to the Children's Museum of Pittsburgh and your partners at the Hosanna House and at sites on Aim High. We're very excited that we get to celebrate this award with you today. And Anne, I don't know if you got a chance to show it, but flash that award up on screen. There it is. Yeah. Let's all unmute one more time or use a reaction icons to cheer loudly one more time for our recipients today for Best Practices Award. Congratulations. Awesome. Betsy, any final comments before we wrap up today?
I just think that this is an amazing partnership and that it will inspire many of us to look at how we can more deeply partner and create offerings that benefit museums and those we partner with, and most importantly, the communities we serve. So thank you so much for being that point of inspiration.
Yeah, I agree. Thanks for the inspiration. I will say thanks to everybody who joined us today live and those who are listening, in their own time later in the recording. We hope that this event and this program has, shed some light on a project that maybe brings a little inspiration or even joy to your worlds, and also what was teased for the future that excites you too. We hope to see folks join us on October 30th for our next event in the series, celebrating our Collaborators Award recipients. And I do want to remind our recipients to stay on for just a moment after everybody leaves for a quick snapshot. But thanks, everybody. Have a great week. Hope to see you around the rest of the series, and get out and see AIM High when it's close by. Thanks, everybody.